Aloha and welcome to Wind in Her Hair. Guaranteed no BS, real breakthroughs, raw truths on mindset, love, sex, purpose, and so much more. This is about getting wind in your hair, getting unstuck, being free, and stepping fully into who you were meant to be, starting right now.
Welcome to Wind in Her Hair. I'm Anna, your host, and I have a very special guest today. We go back over 25 years. She's one of my best, most closest friends on this planet. And we moved to New York together to model, to Europe, back to LA to model. So we just gallivanted all over the world, getting wind in our hair. And Cara is an entrepreneur. She's a small business owner. She's married with 3 children, currently in Orlando, Florida. So welcome, Cara. Thank you so much
Thanks
for being here.
I'm so excited. I love connecting with you, even from Tennessee to continuing our journeys.
So today the episode is going to be about sobriety and Cara's journey, which is a very fascinating, interesting journey. So if anybody is on the journey of sobriety or curious sober like me, so we have a curious sober and then we have a sober person here, and we're going to dive deep into all of the things.
Let's do it. I know one of your first questions was about the beginning of my sober journey, when you asked me what my breaking point or when I kind of knew something needed to change. And I feel like that was really easy for me to answer, because although I didn't have like some major breaking point or rock bottom, like your typical rock bottom, I think I had enough instances where it was just building up and I wasn't able to trust myself when I would drink. Like it was like a 50-50. The outcome would be pretty bad or fine. And I feel like up until about, I think I started getting the nudge about 3 years after my dad's suicide. Things had turned a little darker, a little more ominous with my drinking. I feel like before then it was kind of just fun. Like it's so socially acceptable and something that goes along with youth, like in our 20s. Remember traveling, going out to the clubs, all of it was really it was kind of fun until it just wasn't. And I started noticing that I would find myself in this place of despair the morning after, and I just knew it was wearing me down. I was really just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I just found myself digging out of a hole every morning rather than starting from where I start now, which is a place of clarity and freshness every morning, feeling good, not wondering what you did or said the day before. Yeah, and then I feel like it's like a balancing act. I remember trying to drink until you kind of felt good and then stop. I was sick of managing it. I felt like alcohol was winning. It was winning over a lot of other things in my life. I felt powerless to it in a way, which was weird because I felt so powerful or empowered in so many other areas of my life. And I didn't understand like why I had this thing that seemed to have power over me. And it came to a point where I really couldn't control my behavior when I was drinking. And so, yeah, I'd say that was kind of my breaking point, or just a slow realization that I wanted to change my life. And that was a good place to start.
Can we back up a little bit? You mentioned that it's kind of was a turning point during or after your dad's suicide.
Yeah, I feel like my drinking escalated. I was pregnant when my dad took his life. I was about 7 months pregnant. And of course, I'm not going to be drinking while I'm pregnant. Those are definite times in my life I can look back and I was sober for the sake of my kid. Honestly, when that pain or that frustration, that anger, all about my dad's death was building up. And when I had Gia, my third daughter, I just wanted to feel numb. I was sick of having to feel everything that I'd been feeling the last 3 months. And I can remember just really picking up in a way that I hadn't drank before, just to kind of numb that and manage that. It was like a quick fix or an easy out that I could and plus then again, you're home with a new baby. Everyone else is carrying on with their lives again. And I felt kind of stuck. And I felt a lot of self-pity, and those two just don't go to all three. I was isolating, drinking alone. I was kind of bored, which was all my fault. I'm not blaming a baby or a death in the family, I really chose just to medicate and self-pity. And unfortunately, I feel like that went on for about 3 years until I got sober the summer of 2019.
Wow. So and you're going to get one of your chips coming up soon, right?
Yeah. So in September, on the 6th, I'll have 5 years of consecutive sobriety. But I started my sober curious journey a year before that. And I was sober for 11 months and then thought, oh, well, obviously, if I had a problem, I wouldn't be able to be sober for 11 months. So I'll have a glass of wine. And then that spiral, I'm grateful for that relapse, because that 8 weeks really showed me that I didn't really have any control over it. I intended to have a glass of wine. I drank the whole bottle and drove home that night. Probably definitely legally drunk, which was one of the things that I was most ashamed of with my past drinking. The first thing drinking does is, at least in my opinion, I don't know, scientifically, but it takes away like your self-awareness and it kind of dims the reality of what's going on. So 8 weeks later, I resurrendered to just the fact that alcohol was no longer serving me, and I really was on to something before, and I re-embraced it with a lot more serious, intentional action, I guess.
So what about your family? What do you think their perspective was, their thoughts about your drinking habits? Were they worried for you?
Yeah, my oldest son was 14 at the time. I think he was kind of wrapped up in his own pain with what my dad had done. Ava was about 11, and she noticed right away and kind of watched me like a hawk, which was amazing to have someone, in your life that's kind of that invested and love you that much and just be so tuned into where you're at and what you're going through. And then of course the baby was the baby. Unfortunately, I feel like Justin at the time had built up, he didn't even know it, but my husband had just so much pressure and so much picking up the pieces and had built up a fair amount of resentment. I don't know. At face value, he was trying to be very supportive, but in a way, I think resentment was clouding a lot of his judgment at the time with how he accepted my new choices.
Was there ever a need for an intervention?
No, I do have friends that actually one of my best friends throughout this journey, she did have that type of a rock bottom or intervention. I think for me, it was just realizing myself that I needed to intervene on my behalf for my well-being, no matter what the cost. I knew it had to start from there because I got some counseling at the time for grief. And also just coincidentally is when I started my sober journey. And she said, well, why are you here? And I said, I don't know how to explain it other than I grew up in Hawaii. And when you get caught in a set of waves and the first one hits, you get pulled under, you're looking for the light to come up, you grab a quick breath of air, and then the next one hits. And then that one tires you out a little more, and you have less energy. And then the next one hits. I said, I feel like I'm caught in life right now where so that I gave her that kind of analogy because I didn't really know how to describe what I was feeling or what was going on. I didn't know what was the cause, like the chicken or the egg. I didn't know if the drinking was causing all my confusion and anger and frustration or it was the frustration and the anger and the resentments that were causing the drinking. So I needed to start picking things apart and compartmentalizing and figuring out kind of who I was. And I knew that was a good starting point to just axe alcohol from my life. I'm still not quite sure. I know that getting sober, the clarity that I live in nowadays and being able to identify what's robbing my peace. In sobriety, we talk a lot about peace, and how those kind of flow together. And I don't necessarily know that they are in a certain order. I just know that one affects the next. Usually if I'm not at peace or I'm wrestling with something, I try to track down the robber of that. It's usually me that I'm not in acceptance about something, person, or situation in my life as being what it's supposed to be. And not necessarily that you have to accept like abuse or accept someone like bombarding your boundaries but it's accepting that I can't control everyone and everything around me.
Right. Oh yes, I never mentioned this in the beginning, but both Cara and I grew up in Hawaii surfing and riding horses. So I love that analogy though about the waves because it's so true. Like if you get stuck on the first wave of the set, you're just underwater. Must have felt like to barely keep your head above water during this whole season.
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of desperation. Like when you say like what was the breaking point or rock bottom, I was so desperate for something to shift in my life. I was sick of that cycle of just getting pounded, really, is what I felt like. Not at peace with where I was at or who I was at the time. It was really a self-pounding, which is a lot about sobriety, is taking inventory and taking accountability for your part in things. You can only make decisions for yourself.
Some people talk about sobriety, alcoholism as being either genetic. What do you think about that? What have you learned in your years of sobriety and alcoholism?
When I speak of there is a community out there that's very supportive, and I do find a lot of support in that. But I also feel like and a lot of people would argue with me about this, there's so much choice involved. You really do have a choice, and I bet you a lot of people would disagree that they felt pretty helpless when it comes to alcohol. Not that I didn't, but I mean, it's you're the one choosing to pour that drink, that glass of wine, whatever it is, and put it into your body. And so I just know that that's just not a choice for me anymore. Like where it leads and who I become, or the shifts that start happening in my life, in my mind, spiritually, mentally, physically, I just don't want any part of anymore. So for me, it's really just black and white. I cannot and do not want to pick up one drink, because I know that just, regardless of being an alcoholic or having it be genetic, because my father was an alcoholic, a closet type alcoholic. And when I found myself turning into him, that's the secrecy, the part after he died, the part where I would one of your questions was, what role did shame or secrecy play? And I feel like in our early years, it was all about open fun. I wasn't hiding how much I was drinking. We were almost celebrating it. Remember, just huge magnums of champagne in Switzerland, just spraying it all over everyone. And I mean, I didn't really, at least then, sense any shame or secrecy about anything. But again, alcoholism or the use of alcohol is progressive, meaning it's always kind of increasing and getting worse. And I did find that to be true. I found myself turning into my dad, almost like alcohol had become a secret lover. It was weird. I would kind of hoard it, which is so weird because we have a restaurant, and in the office we have walls of alcohol and wine, and I would go in and take a bunch out, not just a few, and then I would stock my wine fridge and like have it in the cupboard. And I remember my husband asked me like, what do you think, you're gonna like run out? And then I remember kind of hiding how much I would have. Like I'd make sure I had a few drinks before he came home, and then we'd have some drinks together. And if it were mixed drinks, I'd pour mine a little stronger than his. And I don't know why. I still to this day don't know why I felt like I needed to, hide that or sneak more. Like sneak from who? You can't lie to yourself. I know what I was doing. And so I think that's where the shame came in this like mental process of trying to control this weird relationship I had developed with alcohol.
So wild. It's so powerful, the hold that it has on us, right?
And then I find myself before sobriety, I was trying to control my own alcohol. And then after sobriety, I found myself trying to control others around me, i.e. mostly my husband, like looking at how much he was having or analyzing his behavior. Has he had any? My obsession with alcohol in my own use had transferred into obsessing about other people's alcohol or becoming fascinated watching other people in their drinking behavior while we were out at dinner or whatever, and then using that to verify or validate my own feelings or thoughts about sobriety. It was just, you just want to get free from any obsession with alcohol at all is really something that's important. me.
How difficult is it, sobriety? Do you ever think about drinking? Do you ever get tempted? Do you ever struggle with it?
It's funny, sometimes it'll sneak up on you in the weirdest ways. Like, why am I different? Or why have I made this choice? Or a weird drinking dream. I know that's for anyone out there that is sober, you'll have these weird dreams sometimes that you're drinking in your dream. And then you usually wake up super relieved. Like, oh my gosh, I haven't murdered anyone. I haven't, I don't have to start over. It's a strange thing sometimes. But honestly, all I have to do if I feel tempted is just think about how sick and tired I was with it. And then it's today, you try to just take one day at a time. For today, it's really not a struggle. And I'm grateful for that.
I love that. I recently started telling myself this little mantra when I start to feel overwhelmed with all of the projects that I take on, all of my big dreams, and I start to doubt myself and feel paralyzed with indecision. I know that we have an enemy and that his goal is to kill and steal and devour and destroy, right? He wants to take the people who want to have a better life, destroy that with distraction, alcohol, and all the other things. And so I started saying, not today, Satan, not today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today.
Not today.
One day at a time.
I think otherwise it can maybe become overwhelming. Just setting your intention for the day.
You go to AA, correct?
Yeah, I go to a meeting probably a couple times a week or a month. I'd like to say a week, really. It just works for me to go and connect and support other women. I go to a women's meeting and I have a sponsor and I speak to her probably weekly at least.
How's Gigi today? So what do you do to stay sober?
Well, like I talked about, is for me, staying sober is not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally and mentally also is probably just as important. And honestly, I went through about a year of my life going through some heartache and things where I can look back and see that although I was physically sober, I wasn't emotionally sober. I made a lot of decisions that stemmed from a place of hurt, abandonment, fury, and I was acting out. And I definitely, I'm proud that I maintained my physical sobriety, but I think they're all tied together. So I make sure to practice a lot of self-care, take time for myself. I do include some of the rituals that seemed pretty silly in new sobriety. I remember getting some advice to keep up with some of the rituals that I had with drinking and just replace it with non-alcoholic. And it just seemed so stupid at the time. But once the phenomenon of craving, it's referenced as, subsides, meaning your literal physical addiction to alcohol, which is where that craving comes from. Like, if I don't have that, I'm going to freak out. Once that subsides, which really is only a few weeks, a couple months, depending on where you're at with it. For me, it really was just about 3 weeks where it started to subside. I did start to implement those rituals back in with mocktails, and it makes it fun. Makes it feel like you're not being left out, especially in a social situation. So those are actually really important to me. I'll even bring, like, to a barbecue the other day, I made sure I brought mint and kombucha and sparkling water and some jalapenos so I could muddle up my mocktail. And it's just nice. It's like a little treat. And so those rituals are pretty important to me.
How has sobriety impacted your relationships with other people and yourself?
I'd say in the beginning, I just was really nervous about letting anyone know, especially my kind of drinking ladies. We had a little circle of friends where we would go out and lunch and day drink and bitch about stuff. And some of those relationships honestly fell away pretty quickly. I think your lack of drinking kind of reflects on theirs. And maybe I'm not right in that. Maybe that's just my perception or I'm projecting that. But some of them didn't last. They were, and that was fine because the ones that did kind of continued on my journey of finding my authentic self. And speaking of authenticity and honesty, That's become so much more in my relationships. It really, nothing's convoluted. You know, when you're drinking, you can see it happen with people, and this is not a judgment, but sometimes insincerity can kind of creep in. And I used to become a chameleon almost, like start to mirror that person more when I was drinking and just tell them what they wanted to hear, you know, like whatever. What am I trying to say? There's just no like fluff or confusion around my relationships anymore. Everything's just a lot more direct, and call it maybe not as fun, but it's not as tiring. It's just you are exactly how you always are all the time. And there's something so freeing and so refreshing about that. Just to know that you're right there, wherever you're at, it's just right there at the surface. You're not masking, you're not numbing, you're not diverting with some other version of yourself that is presented in drunkenness or buzzness or whatever. It's really nice. And as far as my relationship with myself, I used to have a pretty savage relationship with myself, really based on how I felt I was doing in life. I would reward or punish myself accordingly. I had a pretty negative self-talk in my mind with myself. I focused a lot on failures and more than successes. And I really honestly didn't love myself. And I remember at the beginning of my sober journey, looking in the mirror and I'd be like, do I love myself yet? And I could honestly, I didn't. It took time. I got to a point about 6 months in where I liked myself. And then now I can truly look in the mirror and show myself unconditional love for wherever I'm at, be it in a place of failure or success. Even at my low points, I can look in the mirror and love myself, and accept myself. And that has been huge.
I am now starting to really understand also what that means, because I'm on a curious sober journey, right? So we can dive into that a little bit. It's only been since July 23rd, since I haven't had anything to drink, that I realized that I stopped drinking I was drinking because I felt guilty about something. But I realized too, like what you're just saying about loving yourself, since I've stopped drinking, I do have a cleaner, more aligned, like peaceful relationship with myself, where I'm not beating myself up for having to recover from a hangover or saying something I regret to somebody that I loved, right? Some of the worst arguments I've had with my ex-boyfriends and my ex-husband were because of alcohol. Like some of the darkest, I'm sure you could relate too, right? You just like when you're drunk, you explode, because when emotions are high, wisdom is low, right? And so one moment jumps out at me recently where I was doing so good, not drinking, because of something that happened with my mindset coach, which maybe I'll dive into in a bit. But I was out with a girlfriend and she said, let's go get a drink. And this is the first time I've been in this situation since I stopped drinking, right? So I had this mental battle with myself. The whole time we're at this festival watching live music down here in Nashville, and we're walking to the bar, and every step I'm fighting this mental battle, right? And I literally talked myself into it. I said, you know what, Anna, you're doing good. You're not an alcoholic and you're fine. You could have a glass of wine. So we get to the bar. I sit up at the bar. The guy hands me the drink menu. My girlfriend, she orders her drink. And I'm literally like, it's a major tug of war. And I felt so empowered. And I told myself, I'm not going to drink if I feel like I have to. I would want to drink just because not because I feel like I need to feel numb or avoid this negative feeling. So at the very last minute, I made a game time decision and I said, I'll take a mocktail, please. And I can't tell you how empowered and amazing. I went home that night feeling so proud of myself that I did not cave in, that I didn't get weak. So that was just a challenging moment that I had. And that was my next question for you, was what unexpected challenges came once you stopped drinking? And then what tools helped you stay committed?
That's a good question. I think in new sobriety, you make a lot of mistakes with your expectations. There's a lot of fear. Everything's so new and raw a little bit, and you don't have your, I guess almost like your comfort blanket. So everything just feels edgy, and you make a lot of impulsive judgments on those around you. It's almost like you're in survival mode. When you're in survival mode, you're not really in thrival mode. You're not thriving, you're surviving, right? And so I think just little mistakes I can look back and see. And none of them are like huge, but I could definitely go back and do things a little different if I could with all the experience I have now with it. Definitely your marital relationship, your foundational relationships start shifting. When you've gotten used to certain patterns of behavior and how you relate to each other in those patterns, when you shake it up with a huge change, like it shouldn't be a huge change to X alcohol from your life, but it's funny how it really is. It's like a snowball effect. Making one little change can kind of snowball into some others, and it opens your eyes to a lot of things that you want to change around you. And when they start changing rapidly, a lot of people around you don't calibrate as you're, around your the way that you might expect them to. And so expectations are dangerous a little bit, I feel like. That was a challenge, managing my expectations. What drove me the most in early sobriety to stay committed was my desperation for change. I just knew no matter what, I was so desperate to be back on that surfboard or whatever floating device that would save me from that drowning, that being pulled under. I was clinging on to for dear life. And sobriety was one of those. I guarded it with my life. It was that important to me. I just felt like everything around me was going to shift if I could at least manage to drive me anymore.
When you imagine, let's imagine you go back to drinking. What would your life be like if you started drinking again?
Gosh, that's so hard to even imagine right now.
Can you imagine ever going back? Like there's a joke that they say men can never go backwards sexually and women can never go backwards financially. I couldn't go backwards either, but imagine going back and getting drunk and having those horrible hangovers and wondering what you said and being so guilty about being such a bitch the night before, right? So I'm just imagining imagine going back and.
Well, recently we were at our restaurant and my husband had a similar, like I had my mocktail, which was sparkling water and fresh orange juice with a squeeze of lime. And he had like a real, like our walk home margarita, which has orange juice in it. And I kept leaving the table, bussing, doing things, greeting people who were coming in. And I sat back down and the table had gotten moved around a lot. And I just grabbed his drink thinking it was mine and took a big slug. And I didn't swallow, but I quickly realized like it's loaded with tequila and triple sec. And just the next water glass, I spewed it out at the table and swallowed it. Just having that in my mouth even, I just was so repulsed, honestly. But I just honestly really can't imagine going backwards. Just is not an option. Even I've considered it. I've considered quitting when I was going through kind of what I mentioned earlier, that season of what am I doing this for? Like it felt like at the point I was at, sobriety was honestly costing me more than I wanted to be charged. Right. And I'm like, what is the point? Like no one else in my wants to grow. You have all these fears and doubts creep up and it's like, what am I doing all this for? Mm-hmm. What if I were to just go back to how it was? But there really just isn't. Once you're in the light and you've experienced the freedom that you can have, and the clarity and the peace and the consistent joy, not the highs and lows, it really starts balancing out. You kind of never want to go back to that chaos. Mm-hmm. My sponsor says a lot. She's like, new sobriety is like a roller coaster. And then it's like speed bumps. And then it's lasagna. And I really like, I do. Who doesn't love lasagna? But the roller coaster, the fear, the highs and the lows being so dramatic in your life are so exhausting. And I would never want any part of that again.
What about your husband? And did he ever want to jump on board, or how did he feel about your sobriety?
I think in the beginning he was really excited. And then one of my mistakes that I made in new sobriety was to project onto him and start judging his use of any alcohol, which started to really just feel like rejection for him, I guess, is how he's explained it later when he was able to kind of identify what he was feeling. He kind of felt in a way that I was making him feel like he was no longer good enough. In my new sober self, I think he had some insecurities that he was no longer going to be the man that I needed or wanted anymore. And I had a lot of insecurities, feeling like I was no longer going to be that fun party girl, life of the party, star of the show, center of attention, that kind of that was my persona when we would be out having fun. So he had an insecurity that he wouldn't be good enough for me, and I had an insecurity that I wouldn't be good enough for him anymore, that he would want that old version of me back, and that he wouldn't want the new version. And I think those played off of each other for a while in a real negative way until we kind of got to the bottom of where and why, where those insecurities were coming from and stemming from, and address them. And I wish I could say that they got addressed really cleanly and easily and under the light of the Lord, and, but it wasn't. It was really messy. And I think maybe sometimes you need to burn it all to the ground and rebuild rather than try to piece your little house back together. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes rising literally from the ashes with a clean slate is sometimes it was in the cards for us in a way. And I can honestly say that I feel like we're better and stronger where we're at now than when we were trying to piece it all together.
So he's always supported your sober journey?
I think he knows, and he's told me before that he definitely prefers. There were just a lot of challenges. Wild. Like, I would get wild, kind of unmanageable. And
we used to call them FORs.
Yeah. Yep. Fits of rage. And now I've been able to identify where these come from and why. And he's even been able to see just some things in my childhood, some things with how I was raised, some things that happened to me. We all have traumas. And in a way, I had, rather than address my trauma, deal with it, root it out in healthy ways. I had been masking and numbing for so long that really when I got sober, all of those came to a head. And I was able to get clarity with why I was having those, quote, fits of rage. And again, they would come out a lot when you were drinking because, again, your self-awareness is down. It loosens everything up and it pours out when you're not in a place of control.
What do you wish more people understood about addiction and recovery? Especially maybe from a woman's point of view or for women?
I honestly think mostly that drinking is so socially acceptable in any situation, like a baptism, name any event, a baby shower, even when the pregnant girl's not drinking, everyone around her is, a bachelorette party, a wedding, anything, as you know. So I would say, honestly, listen to those little voices or those little flags. Don't align yourself just with what's happening around you or what's socially acceptable. I wish more women would tune into that little voice that's asking her, is this really serving you? Mm-hmm. Is this really how you get comfortable? Is this really how you're going to meet the man of your dreams? Is convoluted and buzzed or drunk? Is that really how you're going to form meaningful connections that are, that serve you and serve the other person in the relationship? Is this really serving my children the best? Because a lot of times alcohol is a big liar. It makes you think you're doing better at things. Oh, I'm a better singer. Oh, I'm more friendly. Oh, I'm a better mom. I'm more fun. It's the great deceiver. And so I wish more women understood that it is deceptive.
And I wish more people understood that when you go out on a date with someone and you tell them you're not drinking, that they respect that and they don't try and talk you into having a shot with them. That was twice that happened to me. So but again, I felt like, okay, I didn't feel tempted whatsoever. For 1 second, I didn't entertain the idea. If anything, I was annoyed. I just wanted to have my mocktail. Or, those athletics they're gluten-free, alcohol-free beers. And they taste like a normal beer. They are so good. And so just chilling out by the pool, I have those and I feel like I'm not missing out at all.
Yeah, again, those little rituals are nice because they taste just like it. And the only reason, let's be honest, the only reason we drink alcohol is to feel the effects. There's no, it's not because of any flavor. It's really not. That's another deception, like where you're just kind of tricking yourself. You're only drinking, and why would you drink 3 or 4 or 5? You don't have 3 or 4 or 5 mocktails. You're doing it to get the effects of the alcohol. And I get it. I remember you just look forward to that feeling like where your shoulders would drop in relaxation from it. But it doesn't last. You're chasing it, and then it's so exhausting. And yeah, it's really rude to push someone. They just don't get it. And truly is probably just trying to get you, ruin your self-awareness so that he could pull the wind in your hair.
Oh my goodness. I love that though. Like, yeah, people drink to feel different. And I remember I was married once and with somebody who wouldn't stop drinking. And that's all I'm going to say. And I didn't understand at all because I would drink once in a while, but I didn't grow up, like we drank in New York, but I could go years without drinking. And when I was a single person and pregnant, I wasn't drinking. The whole time I had my baby up until 3 years old, I wasn't really drinking until I met my ex-husband. And then I remember thinking, why is it so hard? Why can't he just stop? When I became educated about alcoholism, I realized he just wants to feel different. And so I knew why I was drinking. People just want to feel different. They want to numb themselves. They want to avoid that pain, whatever it was. And so for me, I knew that I was feeling guilty because I'm in a season right now where I'm not with my children full time. And that's because of a career path that I chose to take to make a temporary sacrifice to have a better quality of life for my children and I. And I spend such a hard time of feeling this overwhelming guilt. I just want to be with my kids, but I'm like stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? And once I realized, I'm drinking because I feel guilty, I was like, okay, well, stop feeling guilty, Anna. And I walked myself through that process with my mindset coach. And also here's another thing I did, which may not work for everybody. If you don't have a relationship with God, this may not work for you. But I literally just asked God. I said, hey, can you help me? Can you take away my desire for alcohol? And I don't know if that was, I think the combination of the guilt, and it's wild. I was shocked. I was blown away because I do have a relationship with God. I do talk to him and pray and ask him for things. But it was just so amazing how I really gave that to him. I laid it down and I said, can you help me take away my desire for alcohol? I just kept asking and asking. And then when I really decided to stop drinking, I don't know, it was pretty amazing.
It's amazing.
What?
Blanking out, I was just thinking about the same thing. I've definitely cried out when I just felt like I didn't have, what it was going to take to get me through that day And I definitely, that's a big part of my spiritual life is prayer and reliance on God, which everything.
So what does freedom look like for you now that you're sober?
Well, definitely freedom from alcohol physically has had a huge impact. Like you're never digging yourself out unless you're sick. I remember the first few weeks sobriety, I was just like, is this how you're supposed to feel? You're supposed to just feel like this clear and fresh and kind of energetic. I didn't realize how much I was bogging myself down physically. Your skin changes, your nails change. I couldn't grow nails. And then 6 months later, I had claws. So the physical changes and then, the emotional and the mental, just being in the same consistent place. Where you left off the night before is kind of where you wake up and start off from the next morning, which has a type of momentum that carries through. I felt like when I would spend those 4 hours a night drinking or whatever, it would just break that cycle of momentum mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And it would just slow you down. Now I can carry the momentum from the day before into the next day intentionally, just with wherever I'm at, whatever I'm working on. No break in
Regrets.
that. And at first I found that kind of oppressive that I just didn't have a break from reality because I had gotten so used to that 4 hour whatever break and go to sleep. Yeah, buzzed and feel like, I'm going to start over tomorrow. Yeah, well, you really would start over. the next day. You'd start over from feeling like you're in the same place that you were without that momentum.
What was the longest amount of time that you would go without having alcohol? Would you have alcohol every day?
I think I'd gotten to the point where, yeah, it was really just a big part of my 4 or 5 o'clock hour. Pop open whatever we had decided to have. But before that, I'd say definitely the longest were during all my pregnancies. And then I would do a cleanse every now and again. So that would be like a week, 10 days maybe. But I remember almost the first thing I would want to do when I was done was like, finally have, that release, which back now I'm like, how is that the release? Like, there's so many other things, but you just, again, I don't know if you're conditioned. We grew up, in the 90s and 2000s where it was all about, it really was a big party era. I feel like now young people, even my college kids, there's so much more awareness and intentionality with health and choosing healthier decisions. It's almost like trending, which is really cool to see. I know there's still a party scene in colleges and stuff, but there's just people are into working out and matcha tea and just all these things that I don't know. Such a movement towards that in early 20s that's going on right now, which is so refreshing.
Yeah, it is. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's sober curious right now?
Just follow the little breadcrumbs, like follow your heart, follow, the experience. There's nothing like experimenting to bring clarity with something. Start out with that. I know there are people that are deep into like alcoholism and drowning in it, and they need intervention. They need rehab. They need these extreme facing criminal charges as a result. And they have to because of courts. Everybody's journey is so different. But for the sober, curious journey, I think that's what it is. Just exploring the choice of sobriety and seeing where that takes you.
And that makes me think too, for me, when I said, okay, I'm going to stop drinking on the July 23rd, I didn't tell myself I'm never drinking again for the rest of my life. I think if I said that, that would have made me panic. And I never got to the point where I needed rehab or got pulled over, never had a DUI. But I knew I was drinking because I was in a really toxic marriage. I was miserable. And so I told myself I'm not going to drink, and I don't know where this journey is going to take me, but I know it's not serving me. And I was speaking with one of my clients, and he said, I'm not really enjoying alcohol right now. And that jumped out at me. I thought to myself, well, I'm not either. I was like, I'm not enjoying alcohol. Like literally the taste of it. It didn't feel the way it used to feel with me. And so that's also, I was telling myself, okay, I'm not enjoying alcohol. It's not serving me. It's making me less productive in my days. It's making me tired in the morning. And so I just thought, you know what? I'm going to do an experiment, like you said. I said, I know why I was drinking, so I'm not going to drink anymore if I feel like I need to drink to feel different, right? So I said, I'm just going to set off on this journey. I don't have high expectations. I just know every single day I'm not going to give in to drinking if for the wrong reasons, right? Does that make sense?
Again, just following the little breadcrumb and what leads to the next. Like, oh, that wasn't hard. I had a much more fun time last night, and I can remember every single thing about the night. That was really refreshing. And just kind of taking inventory of cause and effect. And then maybe if one night you did decide to drink or whatever, not beating yourself up. But again, okay, where did that take me? What did I like about it? What didn't I like about it? Just exploring that.
Yeah, just take it one day at a time. Because that was the thing. I said, I don't want to drink out of habit, number one. I don't want to drink out of necessity. And so I haven't wanted to. I've ordered a lot of mocktails off of Amazon. I've tried different ones, Recess, Trip. So just sparkling water, fresh lime like you do. And just having that replacement, that alternative is so helpful. I think it'd be really hard to go cutting cold turkey and literally having nothing in your hand at 5 o'clock. It's just fun, when you go down by the pool. It's really warm here. We have a pool at this place that I live at, and having, there's alcohol-free wine, alcohol-free beer, and you don't feel like you're totally missing out. But when the cocktail server walks by and offers you their free happy hour shot, I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, because it's not even tempting to me, which is amazing, which is really surprising. So I feel better. I feel more focused, more aligned, cleaner. It's just, yeah, I feel honestly, my skin has changed. My nails are longer. I'm getting more ripped, more cut. Those benefits alone are enough to X alcohol out of your life. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's been sober maybe only for like a year and they're having a hard time?
I remembered about a year sober. A lot of advice that you get in new sobriety is to not make any dramatic changes for the first year. Just kind of sit in your new sobriety. Don't get divorced. Don't get married. Don't get, break up with all your friends. Don't do anything drastic. There's a saying, easy does it. And it's like, just sit in it, get to know yourself, respond, don't react, just kind of marinate in that. And then after the next year, you can really, they recommend, or I've been told, then you can really start taking inventory of where you're at and what you need, setting boundaries with people, exploring your primary relationships and seeing, how they're functioning, how they're working, things you need to address, things you need to cut out, things you need to, but to really the first year to chill. And if you're still struggling, I really would recommend a recovery program. I know there's one through our church. They offer a recovery program meeting. Of course, there's AA meetings everywhere. Find a group that works for you, that you really feel connected in, a home group, because there really is support in the community of recovery, of people that have chosen to remove alcohol from their life. And everyone's journey is different. I can't sit here and tell you that one thing that worked for me is going to work for them, but to not isolate, that's another red flag. If you're isolating, the opposite of addiction is connection. So connecting with people around you that are on the same journey is huge. And then all of your primary relationships, they're like a hula hoop. Those that are in your hula hoop's pretty small. The people that are in that hula hoop, their opinions, their cares, their worries, what they think of you matters. But outside that hula hoop, it really. So I would recommend for them not to sow energy into the people around them that are not in their hula hoop. There's not enough bandwidth for that in newer sobriety, especially, just to protect the relationships in your hula hoop.
And I do want to let people know, if they've never heard of Celebrate Recovery, that's a recovery program to help people with hurts, habits, and hangups. I was a part of that for many years while I was still at the tail end of my marriage, going through my divorce. And I honestly can't imagine not having that support. It's just so amazing. You walk into the place, nobody judges you. And I'm so thankful for that, the role that it played in my life during that time. I need to find another one in Nashville because they are everywhere. So, Cara, any last comments or anything else you want to say that's going to add value to people's lives and help them level up in this area?
Yeah, another thing I want to add about finding a group or a meeting, or when you do, some of the best advice I got is to look for the similarities, not the differences. If you get hung up on trying to set yourself apart from rather than integrate with them and find similarities, again, that can be a bit of a hang up. And then honestly, I just think that acceptance is key of yourself, of others around you. I think that's where we find the most serenity and surrendering. I surrender like on a daily, really, my will or my good intentions or whatever they are to God. Starting the morning off in the right way can be, as you know, huge. In a more faith-based sector, that's devotions, getting the Bible, sometime in prayer. In a non-faith, or a different faith-based, they can call it meditation or readings or whatever, but just starting each day with an intentionality. Like for me, it's usually a verse of the day that I know that I'm supposed to have read that morning and incorporate that into my day. Is knowing that you can start over at any time too. I like that. I was told by someone, you can start your day over at any time. Lose your temper at the dog, make a mistake, fly off a handle, forget something, be down on yourself. Just start over. Reread, take a minute, reset, and start it over. You can do that as many times a day as you need to.
I wanted to ask, how could people find you, Cara? I know you're on Instagram, right? If any women want to connect with you, or if they have questions or what you've said totally struck a chord with them and they want to reach out to you, can they do that?
Yeah, you can DM me on @ArmourFamily. It's my last name, ARMOUR family. And what did I put? My bio is Armour Family doing family stuff. So it's nothing fancy. It's just living the day-to-day, embracing what's important. You could reach out to me there.
Okay, I'll have it in the show notes.
Any last comments or recommendations you have with sober curiosity versus 5-year sobriety?
Well, I do. Mainly low expectations and of yourself. And that helps. Just not expecting you to get it all right away. That's what I mean. And just baby steps. One of the phrases too from the recovery program is take it one day at a time. And I think the biggest thing that helped me really was just saying, is this serving me? No, it wasn't. Why am I still doing it? And I love the question of, if you stopped doing that thing right now, would it make your life 50% better today? Whatever that thing is you're doing, like if you stop doing it, would it make your life 50% better? And without a doubt, not drinking made my life 50% better, more than that. Because I would have a drink at like 5 p.m. and I would get tired and I wouldn't want to work on my computer. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? It's such a waste of time. You could be doing so many more things, being more healthy, reaching your goals if you just stopped buying it and found another alternative and attached yourself to something bigger. My why is I want to build an empire, and alcohol was slowing me down, and there's alternatives. So it was a huge turning point in my life. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just joking. And it's expensive. Stop buying booze and wine and like drinking out bottles. I realized how much money I was wasting.
This has been so much fun. I think people are definitely going to get a lot out of this episode, and their lives are going to be changed forever if they really listen to, like you said, listen to their heart, listen to what their body's telling them, and do something about it and put the excuses in the trash. And it's time to level the F up. Get some freaking wind in your hair too. And so thank you so much for being here, Karen, for sharing everything and being so vulnerable. You want to go have a mocktail after this?
You're welcome. It was such a pleasure. I really... Yeah.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, bye.
You showing up matters to me. Now get some freaking wind in your hair. And if this helped you, subscribe. If a friend needs to hear it, share it. And leave a review so more people find it.